Without turning around, I witnessed my daughter-in-law drive off after throwing a leather luggage into the lake. Fighting the muddy bank's pull, I clambered to the shore and pulled the wet suitcase out of the water. I almost dropped it because my hands were trembling so much. I heard it at that point, a feeble, muted sound from within. "Please, God, don't let it be what I think it is," I muttered as I struggled with the damp zipper with quivering fingers. After becoming trapped, it eventually gave way. My heart just stopped in that moment. I had never felt so cold in my 63 years of life as I did when I saw what was within. Everyone calls me Ellie Whitlock, even though my name is Eleanor. I am 63 years old, and since my only kid, Marcus, was buried 8 months ago, I have been living alone. There used to be a lot of fun and memories at our house, which is located in rural Georgia at the coast of Lake Juniper. It felt too big and too silent now. I was enjoying my sweet tea on the back porch that September afternoon when I noticed something. My daughter-in-law Sloane's silver sedan speared down the gravel road, creating a dense cloud of dust. She was speeding madly down that twisting road like a crazy person. There was a serious problem. I squinted to get a closer look after setting my mug on the porch railing. With the engine still running, Sloane applied the brakes hard at the edge of the lake. As though the devil himself were after her, she leaped from the automobile. Her hair was in disarray and her cheeks was flushed. I was afraid she might take the door off its hinges because of how forcefully she pulled the trunk open. At that moment, I noticed the brown leather bag I had given her on the day she wed Marcus. "To always have your dreams with you." At the time, I had informed her how stupid I had been. Sloane pulled the bag out. It weighed a lot. Her arms shook and her body strained, so I could tell. Guilty and anxious, she looked about. "I will always remember that look," I shouted from the porch. Sloane, but she either pretended not to hear me or didn't. She made her way to the edge of the water. Every step felt difficult, as though she were bearing a heavy burden rather than just a weight. She swung the luggage once, twice, and then threw it into the lake on the third heave. The afternoon quiet was broken by the splash. After a brief period of floating, the bag started its slow and terrible drop. Sloane ran back to the vehicle. She disappeared down the dirt road, leaving behind nothing but whirling dust and a dense quiet as the engine screamed and the tires squealed on the gravel. For some seconds, I stood motionless. What had I just seen? The lake, the bag, Sloane, and the sheer desperation of her actions. Despite the afternoon heat, a chill went down my spine. Before my mind could fully comprehend what was occurring, my legs began to move. I dashed across the yard, down the porch stairs, and onto the muddy bank. The distance to the lake was only roughly 300 feet. Despite my knees protesting and my chest burning, I sprinted as if I hadn't run in years. My heart was thumping my ribs, and I was out of breath by the time I made it to the shore. The luggage remained there, slowly sinking while floating. The black, thick leather was. Without hesitation, I waded into the water. The lake was considerably cooler than I had anticipated. My legs and eventually my waist were reached. My feet were sucked up by the bottom mud. I extended my hand, grabbed a handle, and tugged. It weighed a ton. My arms trembled from the strain as I yanked harder. My face was splashed with water, and my clothes were drenched. I finally got the luggage to drag in the direction of the bank. I heard the sound at that moment. A faint, muffled scream from within the bag. My blood froze. "No, it's not possible. Please, God, don't let it be what I think," I begged. Pure panic drove me to pull more quickly. I dropped to my knees next to the luggage after dragging it onto the damp beach. I reached for the zipper. It was damp, slightly corroded, and jammed. My fingers continued to slip. "Hurry up, come on." I clenched my teeth and muttered. My vision became blurry with tears. Once, twice, I pushed the zipper. At last, it gave way. The world came to a halt when I raised the lid. My heart ceased to beat. My throat was filled with trapped air. I quickly put my palms to my mouth to stop myself from screaming. An infant, so small, so delicate, so still, was there, covered in a blanket of drenched powder blue. His eyes were closed, his complexion was as pale as wax, and his lips were blue. He remained still. God, oh God, God, oh God. No, I could hardly hold him since my hands were shaking so much. With a tenderness I was unaware I still had, I took him out of the suitcase. He was chilly, so chilly. He was lighter than a bag of sand. I could fit his little head in my palm. He still had a length of regular yarn tied off his umbilical cord, twine rather than a medical clamp, as though this had been done at home, covertly, and without assistance. "No, no, no," I repeated in a whisper. I put my ear against his chest. Nothing. just silence. I felt the tiniest puff of air when I rubbed my cheek against his nose. It was so slight that I thought I had dreamed it, but it was real. He was breathing, although it was very little. I clutched the infant to my chest as I raced to my feet. My legs almost gave out. I ran faster than I had ever run in my life, in the direction of the house. Water poured out of my clothing. The uneven terrain left my bare feet wounded and bleeding. However, I just experienced fear, a sense of urgency, and the intense need to save the tiny life that was quivering against me. I screamed as I rushed into the home. I have no idea what I was shouting. Perhaps assist, Jesus, perhaps nothing logical. Holding the infant in one hand, I reached for the kitchen phone. I made a 911 call. The keys fell from my fingertips. Twice, the phone almost fell. 911. What emergency do you have? A composed feminine voice inquired. A baby. In the lake. I discovered a baby. He's not answering. He's chilly. He's bluish. Send help, please, please. I need you to calm down, ma'am. Give me your address, please. In the vicinity of Lake Juniper. I stumbled out my address. I was told by the operator to put the infant on a level surface. I used one arm to sweep everything off the kitchen table. Papers, dishes, everything fell to the ground. It didn't matter. I set the infant down on the table. So little, so delicate, so still. Does he have a pulse? In a harsh, unidentifiable voice, I screamed at the operator. Tell me, please. Take a look at his chest. Is it in motion? I peered attentively, trying to find a movement that was almost undetectable. I had to bend over to see it since it was so delicate. Yes, I believe that. Incredibly superficial. All right, pay close attention. I will lead the way. Please get a fresh towel and gently pat the infant dry. Then, to keep him warm, wrap him up. The ambulance is en route already. I followed instructions. I went to the restroom and got towels. I made awkward, desperate movements to dry his little body. Every moment seemed to last forever. I firmly wrapped the infant in fresh towels. I lifted him up once more and held him close to my chest. I didn't even realize I was rocking him. I believed I had forgotten an old instinct. Hold on, little one, I said in a whisper. Please hold on. They're coming. They're coming to help you. The minutes that followed until the ambulance arrived were the longest of my life. I sat on the kitchen floor with the baby pressed to my chest. I sang. I don't know what I sang. Maybe the same song I used to sing to Marcus when he was small. Maybe just senseless sound. I just needed him to know he wasn't alone. That someone was holding him. That someone wanted him to live. The sirens tore through the silence. Red and white lights flashed through the windows. I ran to the door. 2 paramedics jumped out of the ambulance. An older man with a gray beard and a young woman with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail. She took the baby from my arms with an efficiency that broke my heart. She examined him quickly, pulled out a stethoscope, and listened. Her face was emotionless, but I saw her shoulders tense. Severe hypothermia, possible aspiration. She told her partner, "We need to move now." They placed him on a small gurney, put an oxygen mask on him. Their hands worked fast, connecting wires, monitors, things I didn't understand. The man looked at me. "Are you coming with us?" It wasn't a question. I climbed into the ambulance, sinking into the small side seat. I couldn't stop looking at the baby, so tiny. Amidst all that equipment, the ambulance took off, sirens wailing. The world blurred past the windows. "How did you locate him?" the paramedic asked as she continued working. "In a suitcase, in the lake. I saw someone throw it in." She looked at me, then at her partner. I saw something in her eyes. Concern, perhaps suspicion, perhaps pity. "Did you see who it was?" I opened my mouth, then closed it. Sloane, my daughter-in-law, Marcus's widow, the woman who cried at his funeral as if her world had ended. The same woman who had just tried to drown a baby. How could I say that? How could I even believe it myself? "Yes," I finally said. "I saw who it was." We arrived at the Atlanta Medical Center in less than 15 minutes. The emergency room doors flew open. A dozen people in white and green scrubs swarmed the gurney. They shouted numbers, medical terms, orders. They rushed the baby through a set of double doors. I tried to follow, but a nurse stopped me. "Ma'am, you need to stay here. The doctors are working. We need some information." She led me to a waiting room. Cream-colored walls, plastic chairs, the smell of disinfectant. I sat down, shaking from head to toe. I didn't know if it was from the cold of my wet clothes or the shock. Probably both. The nurse sat across from me. She was older than the paramedic, maybe my age. Her name tag read, Nurse Diane. She had kind wrinkles around her eyes. I'm going to need you to tell me everything that happened, she said softly. I recounted every detail from the moment I saw Sloane's car until I opened the suitcase. Diane took notes on a tablet, nodding, not interrupting. When I finished, she sighed deeply. The police will want to speak with you, she said. This is attempted homicide, maybe worse. My daughter-in-law, my son's wife, a murderer. The words lingered in the air like blackbirds. Attempted homicide. I was unable to comprehend it. I couldn't understand. Diane placed her hand over mine. You did the right thing. You saved a life today. But that wasn't how I felt. It felt like I'd uncovered something terrible. Something I couldn't shove back into the darkness. Something that would change everything forever. 2 hours passed before a doctor came to speak to me. He was young, maybe 35. He had deep circles under his eyes and hands that smelled of antibacterial soap. The baby is stable. He said he's in the neonatal ICU, for now. He suffered severe hypothermia and aspirated water. His lungs are compromised. The next 48 hours are critical. Is he going to live? I asked, my voice broken. I don't know, he said with brutal honesty. We're going to do everything we can. The police arrived half an hour later. 2 officers, a woman in her 40s with her hair pulled back in a tight bun and a younger man taking notes. The woman introduced herself as Detective Sergeant Ava Johnson of the Fulton County Sheriff's Department. She had dark eyes that seemed to look right through lies. They asked me the same questions over and over from different angles. I described the car, the exact time, Sloane's movements, the suitcase, everything. Ava watched me with an intensity that made me feel guilty, even though I'd done nothing wrong. And are you sure it was your daughter-in-law? Completely sure. Completely. Why would she do something like that? I don't know. Where is she now? I don't know. When was the last time you spoke with her before today? 3 weeks ago, on the anniversary of my son's death. Ava wrote something down. She exchanged a look with her partner. We're going to need you to come to the precinct tomorrow to make a formal statement, and you cannot contact Sloane under any circumstances. Do you understand? I nodded. What was I going to say to her anyway? Why did you try to kill a baby? Why did you throw him in the lake like trash? Why? The officers left. Diane returned with a blanket and a hot cup of tea. You should go home, get some rest, change your clothes. But I couldn't leave. I couldn't leave that baby alone in the hospital. That baby I had held against my chest, who had drawn his last breath of hope in my arms. I stayed in the waiting room. Diane brought me dry clothes from the hospital storage, nurse scrubs, and a baggy t-shirt. I changed in the bathroom, looking in the mirror. I looked like I'd aged 10 years in one afternoon. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in that plastic chair watching the clock. Every hour I got up and asked about the baby. The nurses gave me the same answer. Stable, critical, fighting. At 3 o'clock in the morning, Reverend Thomas, the priest from my church, showed up. Someone must have called him. He sat next to me in silence. He didn't say anything for a long time. He was just there. Sometimes that's all you need, a presence, proof that you're not completely alone in hell. God tests us in many ways, he finally said. This doesn't feel like a test, I replied. It feels like a curse. He nodded. He didn't try to convince me otherwise, and I appreciated that more than any sermon. As the sun began to rise, I knew nothing would ever be the same. I had crossed a line. I had seen something I couldn't unsee. Whatever came next, I would have to face it. Because that baby, that tiny being fighting for every breath in the next room, had become my responsibility. I hadn't chosen this, but I couldn't abandon him either. Not after pulling him from the water. Not after feeling his heartbeat against mine. The dawn arrived without me even noticing. Light streamed through the waiting room windows, painting everything in a pale orange glow. I had spent the entire night in that plastic chair. My back ached, my eyes burned, but I couldn't leave. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the suitcase sinking. I saw that still little body. I saw the blue lips. Diane showed up at 7 in the morning with coffee and a foil-wrapped breakfast sandwich. You need to eat something, she said, placing them in my hands. I wasn't hungry, but I ate anyway because she stood there waiting. The coffee was too hot and burned my tongue. The sandwich tasted like cardboard, but I swallowed. I chewed. I pretended to be a normal person doing normal things on a normal morning. The baby is still stable, Diane said, sitting beside me. His body temperature is rising. His lungs are responding to treatment. That's a good sign. Can I see him? She shook her head. Not yet. Immediate family only. And we don't even know who the family is. Family. The word hit me like a stone. That baby had a family, a mother, Sloan, but she had tried to kill him. So, who was the father? Where was he? Why hadn't anyone reported him missing? The questions piled up in my head with no answers. At 9 o'clock, Ava returned. She was alone this time. She sat across from me with a folder in her hands. Her expression was hard, inquisitive. She looked at me as if I were the suspect. Ellie, I need to ask you a few more questions, she said, opening the folder. I already told you everything I know. I know, but some inconsistencies have surfaced. Inconsistencies. My stomach nodded as the word lingered between us like an accusation. What kinds of inconsistencies? Ava took out a photograph and placed it on the small table between us. It was Sloane's car, but it was in a parking lot, not by the lake. This photo was taken by a security camera at a supermarket, 30 minutes from here. Yesterday at 5:20 in the afternoon. 5:20 in the afternoon. 10 minutes after I had supposedly seen her at the lake. Impossible. I looked at the photo more closely. It was her car, license plate, and all. But it can't be. There has to be a mistake, I said. I saw her. I was there. I saw her throw the suitcase. You were sure, she said, but my voice sounded less convincing now. Ava leaned forward. Ellie, I need you to be honest with me. What is your relationship with Sloane? Do you get along? And there it was. The real question, the one I'd been waiting for since the police showed up, because we didn't get along. We never had. From the day Marcus introduced her, I knew something was wrong with her. She was too perfect, too calculating, too interested in the money Marcus earned as an engineer. We're not close, I admitted. Do you blame her for your son's death? What? My voice was too loud, too defensive. It's a simple question. Do you blame Sloane for Marcus's death? The accident. That's what everyone called it. Marcus was driving home after dinner with Sloane. It was raining. The car skidded. It hit a tree. Marcus died instantly. Sloane walked away with minor scratches. It always seemed strange to me. It always seemed convenient, but I never had proof. Just a heartbroken mother looking for someone to blame. I don't see what that has to do with the baby. It has everything to do with it, Ava said, closing the folder, because we haven't been able to locate Sloane. She's vanished. Her house is empty, her phone is off, and you are the only person who claims to have seen her yesterday. Her words fell on me like ice water. She was accusing me, not directly, but the insinuation was there, clear as day. She thought I had made it all up, that I had found the baby some other way, and was blaming Sloane out of vengeance. I didn't lie, I said, clenching my jaw. I saw what I saw. The baby is in serious danger if Sloane is the mother. Therefore, we must locate her quickly. If she isn't, we are dealing with an even greater enigma. Ava got up and gave me a card that contained her phone number. If you remember anything else, any detail, call me. She walked out, leaving me with more questions than answers. I sat there, the card in my hand, wondering if I was losing my mind. I had seen Sloane. I was sure of it, but now doubt was seeping in like poison. What if I was wrong? What if it was someone else? What if my grief and resentment made me see what I wanted to see? Reverend Thomas came back at noon. He held a rosary in his hands. Shall we pray? I'm not very religious, he inquired. I wasn't, however. I needed something greater than myself at that very moment. I nodded. We prayed in silence, and even though I didn't understand how it worked, the words I knew helped to calm me. When we were done, I felt a little less broken. The police think I'm lying, I confided. The truth always comes out, he said, even if it takes time. But we didn't have time. The infant was struggling to survive. A different doctor, an older woman with thick glasses and a serious expression, came to see me at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. We need your authorization to run some tests on the baby, she said, adding, I'm not family. We know, but you are the only responsible party. Sloane was hiding, running, or planning her next move somewhere. While Child Protective Services are being developed, we must take immediate action. The infant needs blood work. We must ascertain whether he has any illnesses, whether he has been exposed to medications, and whether he has any injuries that we are unaware of. I put my signature on the documents. I didn't even finish reading them. All I wanted was for them to do whatever it took to save him. The social worker arrived 2 hours later. I felt that Marcy was too young for that position. 25 maybe, a gray suit, short hair, and a polished smile that stopped short of her eyes. She sat next to me and said, "Miss Whitlock, I have some inquiries for you on your circumstances. I know you discovered the baby." The questions and the story are repeated. Marcy, however, was unique. She didn't give me a suspicious look. Somehow worse, she gave me a pitying gaze. "Do you live by yourself?" she inquired. "Indeed. Do you make a steady living?" "I have some savings, and the pension from my late husband." "Criminal history, absence of mental illness, anxiety, or depression?" I paused. "I took antidepressants for 3 months after Marcus passed away. According to my doctor, it's common for sorrow to require medication at times. When I began to feel better, I stopped. After my kid passed away, I experienced depression. I acknowledged, but it's over." Marcy made a note. "I was unable to determine whether the infant would require a temporary residence after being discharged from the hospital. According to her, CPS will seek for approved foster family once he is discharged. He will continue to be held in state custody in the interim." Custody by the state. Something inside of me was broken by those remarks. That infant, whom I had cradled in my arms and who had taken his first breath, would be turned over to strangers, a system, and individuals who would regard him as merely another file or number. What if I desired to? Before I could stop them, the words were released. "Suppose I wanted to take care of him?" Marcy gave me a startled, then doubtful, glance. "You are 63 years old. Ms. Whitlock, you don't hold a foster parent certification. You are the subject of an ongoing criminal investigation and have no legal connection to the child. I didn't make a mistake. His life was saved by me. I am aware, yet there are protocols in the system. The child's best interests come first. To be honest, we also need to take into account your age and your current emotional state." It seemed as if someone had hit me. Too old, too shaky, too damaged. Perhaps she was correct. Perhaps it was absurd to even consider it. I knew that no one else in the world could love him as much as I could. But when I closed my eyes, all I saw was his frail little body. For the first time in 36 hours, I returned home that evening. Diane persuaded me. She assured me that the baby would be okay, and that they would call if anything changed. But I wanted to take a shower and sleep in a real bed. It was becoming late when I drove home. On my right, the lake shimmered. I hauled out the luggage and stopped right where I had seen Sloane. I exited the vehicle and made my way to the bank on foot. The suitcase had vanished. I could see exactly where it had been, but the cops had taken it as evidence. In the dried muck, I could see my own footprints. As night struck, I stood there wondering what the hell had actually occurred, whether Sloane was watching from someplace, and whether I would ever know the truth. My phone then rang. The hospital was the location. My heart stopped. I ignored every speed limit sign as I drove back to the hospital. And Diane's voice repeated, "You need to come back now, Miss Whitlock." My hands on the steering wheel shook. I could hear my heart beating so loudly above the engine. Over the phone, Diane had not provided me with any information. "Come back now," was all that was needed to conjure up the worst-case scenarios in my mind. The infant was dead. That must have been it. If not, why would they make such an urgent call? After 2 days of fighting, his small body eventually gave up. I hadn't moved quickly enough. I parked carelessly, occupying 2 spaces. I bolted for the emergency exits. At the door, Diane was waiting for me. She had a solemn expression. There was another item, though, that I was unable to interpret. As if she understood exactly what I was thinking, she answered right away, "He's alive. You must accompany me, but the baby is alive." She took me along unfamiliar hallways. After passing the NICU, we continued going after using an elevator to the 3rd floor. We arrived at a tiny conference room at last. Detective Ava, Marcy, the social worker, and an unfamiliar male were all inside. He was perhaps 60 years old. He had on spectacles and a dark suit. He had a lawyer's face. "Please sit down," Ava replied, gesturing to a chair. I took a seat. My legs had a jello-like texture. Everyone gave me intense looks that made me want to flee. "We got the baby's DNA analysis results," Ava stated. Her words fell into the still river like stones. DNA. I couldn't figure out why they had done that. What did they want to find? And when the stillness got intolerable, I inquired. Ava and the man in the suit looked at each other. With a nod, he took out a folder and a few printed pages. He set them down before me. "It's a boy. Medical examinations indicate that he was born about 3 days ago." Ava hesitated. "He's also your grandchild, Ellie." The world came to a halt. The words were nonsensical. Despite hearing them, my brain was unable to process them. My grandson? Not possible. 8 months ago, Marcus passed away. He left no children, no pregnancy, nothing. It's not possible, I said. The man in the suit declared that the findings were definitive. I'm Dr. Ernest Sadto, a forensic genetics expert. To be sure, we conducted the tests twice. About 25% of the baby's DNA is shared with you. He is unquestionably Marcus' son, and your biological grandchild. The son of Marcus. Marcus, my Marcus. I had the impression that someone had struck me in the chest with a hammer. Marcus was the father of a son. He had never met the son. Someone had attempted to drown a son in a lake. However, my voice sounded far away. Marcus passed away 8 months ago. Sloane never mentioned getting pregnant. Exactly. Leaning forward, Ava spoke. At the time of the disaster, Sloane was expecting a child. Our estimates showed that she became pregnant approximately a month before to Marcus's passing, indicating that she was aware. The space was whirling. When Marcus passed away, Sloane was aware that she was expecting. Why did she remain silent? For 9 months, she concealed her pregnancy. Why? Why did she attempt to murder her own child after giving birth in secret? I said, I don't understand. My vision was beginning to blur with tears. Why would she act in such way? He is her son, Marcus's son. That's what we need to discover, Ava remarked. Ellie, there's more. I want you to pay close attention to what I have to say. I prepared myself. I had no idea why, but I knew that things would get worse. We've been looking into your son's accident, and we've found some discrepancies. Significant discrepancies. What discrepancies are there? Following the collision, Marcus' vehicle was inspected. We asked for a new examination, but the official report claimed it was a skid because of the weather. They discovered signs of brake manipulation. They were sabotaged by someone. The word exploded. Sabotage. Murder. There had been no accident that killed my son. He had been killed. I told Sloane it wasn't a question. Our main suspicion is her. Ava acknowledged. However, we must locate her and obtain proof. She has vanished entirely. Her phone hasn't been used. Her financial accounts are untouched. She seemed to have disappeared into thin air. I rose from the seat. I had to relocate. I had to breathe. I made my way to the window. Millions of lights glistened outside the metropolis. Ordinary life, ordinary people. While this nightmare held me captive, I said against the glass, my son, my little one, he was killed by her. Nobody answered. Nothing could be said. A hand touched my shoulder. Marcy was the one. She said, there's one more thing you need to know about his future, about the baby. I pivoted. She had sad yet compassionate eyes. You have legal rights because the child is your biological grandchild. You are able to request custody. Before I could say anything, she raised a hand. The process will take a while. Psychological interviews, home visits, and evaluations will be conducted. The infant will continue to be in state custody in the interim. No. There was a shout as the word was spoken. I won't let you take him away from me. All I have left of Marcus is him. He is my blood, my grandchild. I get it, Marcy remarked. I do, I assure you. However, the system has procedures, and in light of everything that transpired, we must ensure the baby's safety. Maybe he'll feel safer with me than with any stranger. However, I have no say in that matter. The judge and the welfare of the child will decide this. For the first time since his first revelation, Dr. Sadto spoke. We also need to take another issue into account. The infant experienced extreme stress, cold, and almost drowning. His progress will be greatly impacted by the upcoming weeks. He will require ongoing medical monitoring, rehabilitation, and specialized care. I said, I'll do whatever it takes. Whatever. Ava got to her feet. Ellie, there's something I need you to comprehend. You are not under suspicion. Although we accept your tale, you cannot just keep the infant because he is your grandson. A legal procedure exists. Finding Sloane is our first objective in the meanwhile. We need your assistance. How? Sloane, think. Has she mentioned any property, a specific location, or a friend or family member she might be hiding with? I shut my eyes. I reflected on all the discussions I'd had with Sloane over her 3 years of marriage to Marcus. They were few and shallow. She never discussed her family. She never talked about her history. The day she met Marcus, she seemed to have appeared out of nowhere. She has an aunt, I blurted out. Marcus once said, up north near the border. He claimed that Sloane and her grew up in Tucson. Ava jotted it down right away. Name, I'm not sure. Marcus remained silent. Ava replied, it's a start. We'll investigate. All but Diane departed. In that chilly, deserted conference room, she stayed with me. She said, "Do you want to see your grandson?" Unable to say, I nodded. She escorted me to the NICU behind security doors. She forced me to put on a sterile gown and wash my hands. After that, she led me to a corner incubator. And there he was, Marcus's son, my grandson, so tiny, so brittle, attached to wires and tubes, yet alive, breathing, and fighting. He possessed Marcus's long fingers, nose, and dark hair. I said, "Can I touch him?" I put out my hand through the incubator's entrance and said, "Yes, just be gentle." I put my hand on his little hand. It was warm and incredibly soft. My index finger was encircled by his tiny fingers. It seemed like a promise, yet it was a reaction. "Hello, little one," I said in a whisper. Diane placed her hand on my shoulder and said, "I'm your grandma, and I swear on your father's memory that I'm going to protect you. No one will ever hurt you again." Subtly, "He needs a name," she said, "for the hospital files until the mother is located or a judge assigns a name." Elijah, Marcus's first son, was to be named after my father. During a Christmas dinner, he once told me, "If I have a son, I'll call him Elijah." "Elijah," I replied. "His name is Elijah." I spent the entire night sitting next to the incubator, holding his hand, singing the songs I used to sing to Marcus, and promising him a future I wasn't sure I could give him. Since I was now aware of the reality, I had not discovered this infant by accident. He was everything that remained of my deceased son, my family, my blood. Furthermore, I refused to allow anyone to take him away from me. Nobody, not Sloan, not the system. The days that followed were a nightmare of bureaucracy. Every morning at 5, I got up. After getting ready and taking a shower, I headed to the hospital. I was at Elijah's incubator all day, and the visits started in the afternoon. Social workers, lawyers, and police officers all had folders and questions, and they were all determining whether or not I was capable of raising my own grandchild. On the third day, Marcy arrived with a list of prerequisites. Her voice sounded repetitive, like she was reciting an appliance manual: a criminal background check, a thorough psychological assessment, a physical examination, proof of income, a home inspection, personal references from 3 or more non-family members, and completion of a 40-hour childcare course are all required. 40 hours, as if I hadn't brought a child up to be an adult, as if I had no idea how to mix formula or change a diaper. However, I remained silent. I simply nodded and accepted the document she gave me. "How much time will it take?" I inquired. 6 weeks, if you're lucky, or 3 months, if not. 3 months. For 3 months, Elijah would be in foster care while I went through the formalities to show that I was worthy of raising him. Meanwhile, what about him? He will be placed with a licensed temporary foster home upon his discharge from the hospital. He'll get the treatment he needs. Under supervision, you will be permitted to see him twice a week while being watched, as though I were a danger, as though I hadn't saved his life from drowning. I gave Reverend Thomas a call that evening. I required references. I needed people to tell me that I wasn't insane and that I could succeed. The following day, he visited my home. He was sitting in my kitchen sipping the same tea I had made for Marcus as a kid. "I'll help you, of course," he said. "One of the strongest women I've ever met is you. You are a blessing to this child." However, I didn't feel powerful. I felt old, worn out, and afraid. I was at 65. How was I supposed to chase it? At 70, how was I supposed to assist him with his homework? If I reached 80, how would I feel at his graduation? For the first time, I declared aloud, "I'm too old for this." Over his cup, Reverend Thomas gave me a look. When Sarah gave birth to Isaac, she was 90 years old. When love is involved, age is just a number. I wanted to think he was real. Yes, I did. Diane showed me how to take care of Elijah on the 4th day. She showed me how to change his tiny diapers, support his little head, and make sure the formula was at the right temperature. At first, my hands were shaking. I had forgotten the terrifying fragility, dependence, and fragility of babies. Diane would tell me, "You're doing great." Whenever I felt anxious, it didn't feel well. The walking on thin ice was how it felt. Everything would fall apart with one wrong move. Ava came back with news on the 5th day. Her words: "We found Sloane's aunt. She lives in a small town 60 miles from the border near Tucson. We went to interview her and she says she hasn't seen Sloane in 2 years. She says they had a fight. Sloane owed her money, $3,000. Money. It always came back to money with Sloane. Marcus earned a good salary as an engineer. $7,000 a month. He had savings. He had a $200,000 life insurance policy. Sloane was the beneficiary. Did she receive the insurance? I asked. Ava nodded. 4 months ago, $200,000 deposited into her account. 2 weeks later, she transferred everything to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. We're trying to trace it, but it's complicated. $200,000, the value of my son's life, and she had hidden it in some tax haven while planning to kill his baby. Why? I asked the question that tormented me every night. Why kill the baby? She could have given him up for adoption. She could have left him at a hospital. Why try to drown him? Ava was silent for a long moment. We have a theory, she finally said. We were looking into Marcus's finances. We discovered something intriguing. He amended his will 2 weeks prior to his death. He bequeathed everything to his offspring, not to Sloane, to his children. The air left my lungs. Marcus knew. Somehow he knew Sloane was pregnant and he changed his will to protect his son. She killed him for money, I whispered. We believe so. And then she discovered the money would go to the baby if he was born alive. So she decided to eliminate him, too. The pure malice of it left me speechless. She had killed my son. She had carried the pregnancy to term. She had given birth alone. And then she had tried to drown her own baby. All for money. Do you have enough to arrest her? When we find her, yes. But she's still missing. She's smart. She knows we're looking for her. Days turned into weeks. Elijah grew stronger. The doctors removed the tubes one by one. He started breathing on his own, feeding on his own, crying with strong, healthy lungs. It was a medical miracle. According to the doctors, no baby who had gone through what he had should be progressing so well. But I knew it was more than medicine. It was willpower. It was Marcus' spirit living in that tiny body, fighting, surviving, refusing to give up. I completed all the requirements. The background check came back clean. The medical exam showed I was healthy for my age. The psychological evaluation was the hardest. A young woman with glasses asked me questions for 3 hours. How did you cope with your son's death? How do you feel about Sloane? Are you trying to replace Marcus with this baby? That last question stung. I'm not replacing anyone, I said. I'm saving my grandson. It's different. She wrote something down. I didn't know if it was good or bad. The home inspection was humiliating. 2 women checked every corner. They opened closets, checked the refrigerator, measured the windows to see if they were secure. They counted the smoke detectors. They asked about my emergency fire plan. You'll need a certified crib, a changing table, safety gates on all stairways, cabinet locks, outlet covers. I spent $800 I didn't have on baby stuff. My pension barely covered my basic expenses. I had to use my savings, but I didn't care. Elijah was worth it. The child care course was the worst. 15 young mothers and me. They all looked at me as if I were the confused grandmother who had wandered into the wrong class. The instructor was 25. She explained things I already knew with insulting slowness. Babies need to eat every 3 hours. Babies cry when they're hungry or wet. Never shake a baby. I nodded and took notes. Even though I wanted to scream that I had raised a child to adulthood, that I knew exactly what I was doing, but I needed that certificate, so I swallowed my pride and pretended to learn. 6 weeks after finding Elijah in the lake, Marcy showed up at the hospital with a small smile. You've completed all the requirements, she said. The judge will review your case next week. If all is well, you might be granted temporary custody for 2 weeks. 2 weeks. After 42 days of bureaucratic hell, I could finally take my grandson home. But that same night, when everything seemed to be improving, my phone rang. It was Ava. Her voice was tense. Ellie, I need you to come to the precinct now. We found something. Something about Marcus you need to see. I arrived at the precinct with a knot in my stomach. Ava was waiting for me at the entrance. Her face was more serious than usual. She led me down narrow hallways to an interrogation room. On the table was a cardboard box. Inside, I recognized Marcus's belongings. His wallet, his watch, his broken phone, the things they gave me back after the accident. What is this? We finally managed to unlock his phone, Ava replied when I asked. Our technician worked on it for weeks, and we found something. She removed a manila packet, unfolded it, and laid out a number of printed pages on the table. Screenshots of text conversations between Marcus and Sloane from 2 weeks prior to his passing were found. The first one I read. Marcus sent it to Sloane. We must speak. Learned about the baby. Sloane's answer. I have no idea what you're discussing. Marcus once more. In the restroom, I discovered the pregnancy test. How come you didn't tell me? Silence for 3 hours, followed by Sloane. I wasn't prepared to tell you. I felt afraid. What are you afraid of? I am your spouse. We will have children. This is fantastic. One more quiet moment. I don't want to have it then. I want to live, travel, and not be constrained by a child. It's our son. It's not an error. Please don't say that. We can work things out. I'll assist you. My mom will assist us. I'm not looking for assistance. I want my life to return. The warnings become more forceful. Sloane resists. Marcus begs, until the day before the accident, when I got to the final interchange. I talked to a lawyer. Sloane, I'm divorcing you if you choose not to have the child, and I'll fight for full custody if you already have it and don't want to bring it up. I will not allow you to harm my son. Sloane, you're going to regret this. Marcus, does that pose a risk? No response was received. Marcus was dead the following day. I dropped the papers. My face started to well up with tears. I said she killed him. He was going to defend the infant. So she killed him. We think so, Ava stated. There's more. We looked through Sloane's phone logs from that particular week. She called Calvin Jones, an independent technician, 3 times. We took him in to interrogate him. What was it that he said? He didn't say anything at first, but he opened up when we showed him proof of the $2,000 in bank transfers Sloane had made to him the day before the tragedy. He acknowledged that she had hired him to ruin Marcus's vehicle brakes. I was ill. I had to take a seat. Everything had been planned by Sloane. She had arranged for my son's murder to be covered up as an accident. Why would Calvin act in such a manner? Obligations. He took a chance. He owed dangerous individuals $15,000. Sloane immediately gave him $2,000 and then promised him $3,000 more. He accepted it. As an accomplice to murder, he is currently under arrest. We still haven't located Sloane, despite having an arrest warrant for her, for first-degree murder and attempted homicide. She resembles a ghost. I took in everything as I sat in that chilly room. My son had lost his life defending his infant, and because his own mother had also attempted to kill him, the infant was now in the hospital battling for his life. All of it was unconscionably cruel. I questioned, what happens now? We keep looking. We have her photo at every airport, every border crossing, alerts at hospitals in case she tries to change her appearance. Someone will recognize her eventually. No one disappears forever. I was not so confident. It turned out that Sloane was colder and smarter than I had anticipated. She most likely devised an equally complex escape plan if she had meticulously plotted Marcus's murder. That evening, I returned to the hospital. Beside Elijah's incubator, I took a seat. I watched him sleep, so naive, so unaware of the tragedy all around him. His father had died for his very survival. I stood between him and a system that would view him as just another file after his mother attempted to kill him. Your daddy loved you, I said in a whisper. Diane arrived with coffee and said, he died protecting you. I'm going to finish what he started, I promise. She sat silently beside me for some time. When she eventually answered, I heard about the messages. I'm so sorry. I didn't know Marcus could be so strong, I replied. Although he was always nice and gentle, he appeared to be a warrior in those messages, prepared to defend his son. That's what love does, she added. You become stronger than you ever imagined. She was correct. I was experiencing it myself. I never thought of myself as particularly powerful. But now, I had to battle the system, time, and a murderer on the run all for this baby. The days that followed were spent getting ready. I made Elijah a room in Marcus's place. I removed the college pictures, the football trophies, and the rock band posters. I applied a gentle yellow paint job to the walls. I put together the lullaby-playing musical mobile, the changing table, and the new cot. Dismantling my son's sanctuary was sad, but it was a necessary step. Marcus had vanished. Elijah needed a place to grow, and he was alive. The room was blessed by Reverend Thomas. He sprayed the corners with holy water. He prayed for justice for Marcus, for my strength, and for Elijah's protection. He stated that God had a plan, even though we don't always comprehend it. Killing a fine man and almost drowning a baby, what kind of scheme is that? Bitterly, I asked. The sort of scheme that transforms evil into salvation. Sloane's goal was to ruin this family. But notice the legacy Marcus left behind. You discovered a new mission. Despite all the odds, this baby lived. Evil was defeated. Love prevailed. I wanted to think he was real. On certain days, I could. On other days, I saw nothing but blackness. On a Tuesday, the court hearing was planned. I was dressed in my finest suit, which I had worn at Marcus's burial. Marcy came with me. We entered a tiny courtroom. The judge was a 50-something woman with gray hair pushed back and a serious but friendly face. She looked over every document I had, the home inspection report, the evaluations, the references, and the certificates. She carefully went through each page. She looked up at last. She answered, "I have thoroughly examined your case, Miss Whitlock. A 63-year-old lady requesting custody of a newborn is quite unusual. However, a grandma saving her grandchild from drowning is equally uncommon." I was certain that everyone could hear how hard my heart was beating. "I've talked to the hospital, the social workers, and your references, and they all agree that you are capable, devoted, and loving, and that this infant was fortunate to have you there that day." I was about to cry, but I suppressed myself. "Additionally, I've read about the criminal case and the suspicion that the mother of the child killed the father before attempting to kill the child herself. It is unimaginable and horrifying. Stability is necessary for this child. He requires affection. He needs someone to keep him safe." A long, interminable silence. "For this reason, I am giving Eleanor Whitlock temporary custody for a duration of 6 months. Child Protective Services will make monthly visits during that period, conduct progress reports, and, at the conclusion of the 6 months, discuss whether custody will be permanent." "Grandma, congratulations." When the gavel hit, I was able to breathe once again. In the courtroom, I started crying. I sobbed over everything: relief, thankfulness, terror. Marcy gave me a hug. "You succeeded," she muttered. "You achieved it in spite of everything. He's yours to take home." 6 weeks after I pulled Elijah out of the lake, I brought him home 3 days later. I secured him in the car seat with Diane's assistance. She went over everything once more: how to feed him, how to hold him, and how to spot warning signs. Her words, "He's going to be fine." I drove home at 12 miles per hour, saying, "And I'm just a phone call away if you need me." I was afraid of every bump. I felt uneasy every time a car gently drove by my house. However, we got there without incident. With Elijah in my arms, I entered the home, carried him to his room, and placed him in the crib. He appeared very frail and little in that area. He was breathing, though. He was still alive. For now, he was secure. The most difficult weeks of my life were spent at home with Elijah. I had forgotten how demanding taking care of a newborn is. The restless nights, the unexplained sobbing, and the ongoing fear that I was making a mistake. I had reared Marcus with young vigor at 30. Every restless night at 63 left me broken. However, there were also times when Elijah's small hand held my finger, and it was pure magic. When he opened those little, black eyes that were exactly like Marcus's, and stared at me as though I were his entire universe. He stopped crying at the sound of my voice. I understood at the time that every moment of fatigue was worthwhile. 3 times a week, Diane visited. I had forgotten the tricks she showed me: how to interpret his various screams, how to swaddle him firmly to help him sleep better, and how to burp him more easily. She developed to become more than just a nurse. She turned into a lifesaver and buddy. She often encouraged me, "You're doing an incredible job." But I didn't feel amazing. I was scared. I jumped at every odd sound throughout the night. I felt uneasy every time a car gently drove by my house. Somewhere, Sloane remained. I couldn't get rid of the impression that she was nearby, watching, waiting, despite the police's assertion that she had most likely left the country. I installed security cameras on the porch, new deadbolts on every door, and an alarm system that is directly linked to the police. I spent an additional $800 that I didn't have. Elijah's safety, however, was invaluable. 3 weeks after bringing him home, I discovered something one evening. I was arranging Marcus's belongings, which I had kept in cartons, including his documents, books, and clothing. I discovered a faded brown leather journal at the bottom of a box. I had no idea Marcus had a journal. With shaking hands, I opened it. The first few pages were from years ago and contained unimportant ideas about his friends and work. The entries from the previous year, when he first met Sloane, were the next thing I looked at. I read an entry from 4 years ago and met someone today. Sloane is her name. She is intelligent, attractive, and enigmatic. I'm having trouble figuring out something about her. I find her fascinating. I read on. The entries concerning Sloane increased in frequency. Marcus was utterly enamored and in love, yet there were also uncertainties. I feel like I don't truly know her at times. She never discusses her family. She shifts the topic when I inquire. Her life seemed to have started on the day we first met. One more entry. Sloane was perusing my financial statements when I noticed him. Something didn't feel right, but she claimed she was simply interested. Why wouldn't she inquire before looking at that? And then the one that made me feel cold, dated a month prior to his passing. Sloane is expecting a child. I located the test, but she became enraged when I approached her. She claimed that having it would wreck her life and that she didn't want it. How is that possible? It's our son. Today, I modified my will. The baby gets everything. With the money, I don't trust Sloane. Not after witnessing how she spends $1,000 on bags and $500 on shoes. She's always looking for more. A baby isn't an accessory though. It's a life, and I will do everything in my power to keep it safe. The final entry was made on the day of his passing. Today, Sloane threatened me. I would regret pestering her about the baby, she said. That scares me, but I have no idea what it implies. Tomorrow, I will speak with my mother. Tell her everything. She might be able to give me advice. All I know is that I cannot allow Sloane to harm our son. I'll always keep him safe. He never had an opportunity to speak with me. That night, he passed away, and I was unaware of his need for assistance, his fear, or the fact that he had anticipated danger but had not acted quickly enough. I said, "I'm sorry," to the journal. I took the journal to Ava the following day and said, "I am so sorry, my love. I should have known. I should have seen that something was wrong, but I couldn't change the past. I could only protect the future." She read it all. With each page, her jaw grew tighter. She said, "This is important evidence, PA. It demonstrates forethought. It demonstrates motivation. This will bury Sloane when we locate her." "When will you locate her?" I inquired. "It has been nearly 2 months. She's intelligent, but we're doing everything we can. She most likely left the country using fictitious documents. She might be anywhere." However, after 3 days, everything was different. My phone rang when I was feeding Elijah. The number was unidentified. I wouldn't normally respond, but for some reason, I did. "Hello," I said, breathing, silence, and then a voice I instantly recognized. My blood froze when I heard, "Ellie, it's Sloane." I nearly let Elijah go. I scanned the room as though she may be concealed by the darkness. I had to ask, "Where are you?" "It doesn't matter where I am. What matters is that I have something you want, and you have something I want." "You have nothing I want. I have the truth about what really happened to Marcus, about why I did what I did." "I bet you want to know." "I already know the truth. I read Marcus's journal. I know you killed him for money. I know you're a monster." A cold, humorless laugh. "A monster? How dramatic." "You don't know anything, Ellie. Marcus wasn't the saint you think he was." "Don't you dare," I roared. "Don't you dare speak ill of my son." "Fine, you're going to call the police. Go ahead. By the time you hang up this call, I'll be gone. I use burner phones. I'm not stupid." My mind raced. I had to keep her talking. I had to record this somehow. I put the phone on speaker. I grabbed my cell with my free hand. I started recording. "What do you want, Sloane?" "I want my son, your son. You tried to drown him. It was a mistake, a moment of madness. I was scared. I was confused. I had just given birth alone. I didn't know what I was doing, but I'm better now. I want my baby back. Never over my dead body." "That can be arranged," she said with chilling calmness. "Listen closely. I want Elijah, and I want Marcus' will money. The $200,000 from the insurance plus everything Marcus left in a fund for the baby. That's another $300,000, $500,000 total. $500,000. Everything Marcus had worked for. Everything he had saved, all meant for his son. And if I refuse, then I'll come looking for him. I'm his biological mother. Legally, I have more rights than you. And when they finally catch me, I'll say, you stole my baby, that I was threatened by you, that in order to keep him, you made up the entire Lake narrative, my word versus yours, and I'm much younger, more and more sympathetic." I felt dizzy, but I kept recording. "How do I know you won't just kill both of us and take everything anyway?" "You don't, but it's your only option. Bring the baby and the money to the old boathouse by the lake. You know, the one where you and Marcus used to fish. Tomorrow at midnight alone. If I see any cops, I disappear and you'll never see me again. And eventually I'll find a way to take Elijah from you anyway." "Sloane, wait." But the line was already dead. I stood there trembling with Elijah in one arm and the phone in the other. I had the recording. I had evidence that Sloane was alive, that she had threatened me. I called Ava immediately. I sent her the audio. Perfect, she said. It's exactly what we needed. We will now put up a trap. You go to that meeting, but we'll be there, hidden, waiting, and when she shows up, we'll grab her. What if something goes wrong? What if she sees the police and runs again? She won't see us, I promise. I'll have snipers positioned, teams in the shadows. She won't get away this time. And Elijah stays with Diane in a safe place. You're not taking him. You're just pretending to bring him. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. Child Protective Services will make monthly visits during that period, conduct progress reports, and, at the conclusion of the 6 months, discuss whether custody will be permanent. Grandma, congratulations. When the gavel hit, I was able to breathe once again. In the courtroom, I started crying. I sobbed over everything: relief, thankfulness, terror. Marcy gave me a hug. You succeeded, she muttered. You achieved it in spite of everything. He's yours to take home. 6 weeks after I pulled Elijah out of the lake, I brought him home 3 days later. I secured him in the car seat with Diane's assistance. She went over everything once more: how to feed him, how to hold him, and how to spot warning signs. Her words, he's going to be fine. I drove home at 12 miles per hour, saying, and I'm just a phone call away if you need me. I was afraid of every bump. I felt uneasy every time a car gently drove by my house. However, we got there without incident. With Elijah in my arms, I entered the home, carried him to his room, and placed him in the crib. He appeared very frail and little in that area. He was breathing, though. He was still alive. For now, he was secure. The most difficult weeks of my life were spent at home with Elijah. I had forgotten how demanding taking care of a newborn is. The restless nights, the unexplained sobbing, and the ongoing fear that I was making a mistake. I had reared Marcus with young vigor at 30. Every restless night at 63 left me broken. However, there were also times when Elijah's small hand held my finger, and it was pure magic. When he opened those little, black eyes that were exactly like Marcus's, and stared at me as though I were his entire universe. He stopped crying at the sound of my voice. I understood at the time that every moment of fatigue was worthwhile. 3 times a week, Diane visited. I had forgotten the tricks she showed me: how to interpret his various screams, how to swaddle him firmly to help him sleep better, and how to burp him more easily. She developed to become more than just a nurse. She turned into a lifesaver and buddy. She often encouraged me, "You're doing an incredible job." But I didn't feel amazing. I was scared. I jumped at every odd sound throughout the night. I felt uneasy every time a car gently drove by my house. Somewhere, Sloane remained. I couldn't get rid of the impression that she was nearby, watching, waiting. Despite the police's assertion that she had most likely left the country, I installed security cameras on the porch, new deadbolts on every door, and an alarm system that is directly linked to the police. I spent an additional $800 that I didn't have. Elijah's safety, however, was invaluable. 3 weeks after bringing him home, I discovered something one evening. I was arranging Marcus's belongings, which I had kept in cartons, including his documents, books, and clothing. I discovered a faded brown leather journal at the bottom of a box. I had no idea Marcus had a journal. With shaking hands, I opened it. The first few pages were from years ago and contained unimportant ideas about his friends and work. The entries from the previous year, when he first met Sloane, were the next thing I looked at. I read an entry from 4 years ago and met someone today. Sloane is her name. She is intelligent, attractive, and enigmatic. I'm having trouble figuring out something about her. I find her fascinating. I read on. The entries concerning Sloane increased in frequency. Marcus was utterly enamored and in love, yet there were also uncertainties. I feel like I don't truly know her at times. She never discusses her family. She shifts the topic when I inquire. Her life seemed to have started on the day we first met. One more entry. Sloane was perusing my financial statements when I noticed him. Something didn't feel right, but she claimed she was simply interested. Why wouldn't she inquire before looking at that? And then the one that made me feel cold, dated a month prior to his passing. Sloane is expecting a child. I located the test, but she became enraged when I approached her. She claimed that having it would wreck her life and that she didn't want it. How is that possible? It's our son. Today, I modified my will. The baby gets everything. With the money, I don't trust Sloane. Not after witnessing how she spends $1,000 on bags and $500 on shoes. She's always looking for more. A baby isn't an accessory though. It's a life and I will do everything in my power to keep it safe. The final entry was made on the day of his passing. Today, Sloane threatened me. I would regret pestering her about the baby, she said. That scares me, but I have no idea what it implies. Tomorrow, I will speak with my mother. Tell her everything. She might be able to give me advice. All I know is that I cannot allow Sloane to harm our son. I'll always keep him safe. He never had an opportunity to speak with me. That night, he passed away, and I was unaware of his need for assistance, his fear, or the fact that he had anticipated danger but had not acted quickly enough. I said, "I'm sorry," to the journal. I took the journal to Ava the following day and said, "I am so sorry, my love. I should have known. I should have seen that something was wrong, but I couldn't change the past. I could only protect the future." She read it all. With each page, her jaw grew tighter. She said, "This is important evidence, PA. It demonstrates forethought. It demonstrates motivation. This will bury Sloane when we locate her." "When will you locate her?" I inquired. "It has been nearly 2 months. She's intelligent, but we're doing everything we can. She most likely left the country using fictitious documents. She might be anywhere." However, after 3 days, everything was different. My phone rang when I was feeding Elijah. The number was unidentified. I wouldn't normally respond, but for some reason, I did. "Hello," I said, breathing, silence, and then a voice I instantly recognized. My blood froze when I heard, "Ellie, it's Sloane." I nearly let Elijah go. I scanned the room as though she may be concealed by the darkness. I had to ask, "Where are you?" "It doesn't matter where I am. What matters is that I have something you want, and you have something I want." "You have nothing I want. I have the truth about what really happened to Marcus, about why I did what I did." "I bet you want to know." "I already know the truth. I read Marcus's journal. I know you killed him for money. I know you're a monster." A cold, humorless laugh. "A monster? How dramatic." "You don't know anything, Ellie. Marcus wasn't the saint you think he was." "Don't you dare," I roared. "Don't you dare speak ill of my son." "Fine, you're going to call the police. Go ahead. By the time you hang up this call, I'll be gone. I use burner phones. I'm not stupid." My mind raced. I had to keep her talking. I had to record this somehow. I put the phone on speaker. I grabbed my cell with my free hand. I started recording. "What do you want, Sloane?" "I want my son, your son. You tried to drown him. It was a mistake, a moment of madness. I was scared. I was confused. I had just given birth alone. I didn't know what I was doing, but I'm better now. I want my baby back." "Never. Over my dead body." "That can be arranged," she said with chilling calmness. "Listen closely. I want Elijah, and I want Marcus' will money. The $200,000 from the insurance plus everything Marcus left in a fund for the baby. That's another $300,000, $500,000 total. $500,000. Everything Marcus had worked for, everything he had saved, all meant for his son. And if I refuse, then I'll come looking for him. I'm his biological mother. Legally, I have more rights than you. And when they finally catch me, I'll say, you stole my baby, that I was threatened by you, that in order to keep him, you made up the entire lake narrative, my word versus yours, and I'm much younger, more and more sympathetic. I felt dizzy, but I kept recording. How do I know you won't just kill both of us and take everything anyway? You don't, but it's your only option. Bring the baby and the money to the old boathouse by the lake. You know, the one where you and Marcus used to fish. Tomorrow at midnight alone. If I see any cops, I disappear and you'll never see me again. And eventually I'll find a way to take Elijah from you anyway. Sloane, wait. But the line was already dead. I stood there trembling with Elijah in one arm and the phone in the other. I had the recording. I had evidence that Sloane was alive, that she had threatened me. I called Ava immediately. I sent her the audio. Perfect, she said. It's exactly what we needed. We will now put up a trap. You go to that meeting, but we'll be there, hidden, waiting, and when she shows up, we'll grab her. What if something goes wrong? What if she sees the police and runs again? She won't see us. I promise. I'll have snipers positioned, teams in the shadows. She won't get away this time. And Elijah stays with Diane in a safe place. You're not taking him. You're just pretending to bring him. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. One more day. I just needed to survive. One more day. And then Sloane would finally face justice for Marcus, for Elijah, for all the pain she had caused. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed awake watching Elijah sleep, memorizing every detail of his face just in case something went wrong. just in case I never saw him again. Your daddy loved you, I whispered to him, and I love you. And tomorrow, we're going to make sure you're safe forever. The next day passed in slow motion. Every minute felt like an hour, every hour an eternity. At 9 in the morning, Diane came to get Elijah. I packed his bag as if he were going to be gone for a week, even though I hoped to have him back in a few hours. Diapers, formula, extra clothes, his favorite blanket. My hands shook as I placed each item in the bag. He'll be perfectly fine with me, Diane said, taking Elijah in her arms. I have your number. My address is in the hands of the cops. He won't be touched by anyone. I promise. I kissed Diane on the forehead. Then, I kissed Elijah. His soft skin smelled of baby lotion and hope. I love you, little one, I whispered. Grandma will be back soon. I watched them leave. Diane's car disappeared down the street, and I felt like a piece of my soul was being torn away. But it was necessary. Elijah had to be far away, safe, just in case things went wrong. Ava arrived at 2 o'clock in the afternoon with 3 other officers, 2 men and a woman, all in plain clothes, all armed. They turned my living room into a command center with laptops, radios, and maps of the area around the boathouse. Let's go over the plan again. Ava handed me a map. I promise. She indicated spots on the map with a red marker and said, the boathouse is here, abandoned 5 years ago. It has 3 entrances, main, side, and rear. We'll have teams covering all 3. There are snipers on the nearby buildings' roofs here and there. Through the broken windows, they will be able to see the interior. The assault team has returned and is prepared to enter as soon as Sloan is visually confirmed. And what exactly am I supposed to do? I inquired. I sounded more composed than I actually was. One of the officers, a tall man in his 30s, pulled out a little button-sized device and said, you go in, you talk to her, you keep her talking. We need her to confess, to admit she killed Marcus, to admit she tried to kill Elijah. You'll be wearing a hidden microphone. We'll record everything. This is where you put it on your garments. He indicated the area beneath my collarbone. Everything is sent in real time. It features a panic button as well. No matter what, if you press it 3 times in a row, we enter right away. He demonstrated it for me. I gave it 3 fast taps to practice. I would have to remember that for the rest of my life. Additionally, you tell her that the baby is in the car if she asks to see him, that you'd like to speak with her first and find out why she did what she did. Play on her ego. Sloan is one of those people that like talking about themselves. Allow her to brag about her intelligence. For the next few hours, we went over every detail, every scenario, what to do in the event that Sloan was armed, what to do if she wasn't alone, and what to do in the event that something went wrong. I had so much information that my brain was whirling. They forced me to eat a cardboard-tasting ham sandwich at 8 o'clock at night, but I took every bite. I was in need of vitality. I have to be vigilant. They put the microphone on me at 10 o'clock at night. They frequently tested the audio. To ensure that everything went smoothly, they made me say sentences, count to 10, shout, and whisper. Remember, Ava replied, meeting my gaze, it's not just you in there. I'll be paying attention to whatever you say. The group will be within a few feet. We enter at the first indication of actual danger. I promise not to let anything happen to you. I gave a nod. Fear coiled in my stomach like a frigid serpent, yet I wanted to believe her. We departed at 11:15 at night. I was a self-sufficient driver. Ava was hunched over in the passenger seat, out of sight from the outside. The other teams are already positioned, she told me verbally. The perimeter is secured, the rear team is prepared, and snipers are positioned. At 11:40 p.m., we reached the boathouse. It was just how I had remembered. Old, run down, with broken windows and graffitied walls. When Marcus was a boy, he used to come here with me. Behind it, we would fish off the dock. Happier, simpler days. Ava exited the vehicle in a blind zone for Sloan's make-believe cameras. She vanished into the darkness. I was by myself. I glanced at the timepiece. It is 11:55 p.m., 5 minutes. I shut my eyes. I pondered Marcus, his grin, the tender way he referred to me as Mama, and what it would have been like to have him as a parent. I considered Elijah, his future, and everything he was entitled to. A life free from danger, fear, and darkness. It is midnight. My phone began to vibrate. An unknown number sent a text. Now enter by yourself. I exited the vehicle. The air was chilly at night. My breath was visible to me. I made my way to the main door of the boatus. In the silence, every footfall was too loud. The door was ajar. I pushed it. It made a creaking sound. The roar reverberated through the deserted walls. It was nearly entirely black inside. Strange shadows were cast by the scant moonlight that came through the damaged windows. I called out to Sloane. My voice sounded timid and frightened. A voice in the darkness said, "Close the door." The voice of Sloane. I shut the door. Slowly, my eyes adapted to the darkness. She was standing in the middle of the boathouse when I looked at her. She was dressed in dark clothing, including a hooded sweatshirt and black jeans. She appeared thinner and different. It was her, even though her hair was short and blonde. She said, "You came." She appeared somewhat taken aback. "You expressed a desire to speak." I claimed to want the money, and my son. Where? First, I want answers. I'm curious as to why. Marcus, why did you kill him? Why did you attempt to murder Elijah? She chuckled. I had heard the same icy sound over the phone. Ellie, why do you think that? For the cash. Marcus was a romantic fool. He discussed the future, family, and love. Freedom was what I want. I didn't want to be confined to a house with a wailing infant. I wanted to travel and live. What made you marry him, then? Since he worked as an engineer, he made a good living. He had money saved up. He was insured for life. The investment was made. I planned to divorce him, wait 5 years, and take half of everything. However, my plan was derailed when I became pregnant. Her remarks were poisonous. I was burned by everyone. You informed him that you were against having a child. I didn't, of course. Marcus, however, became unachievable. He gave everything to the infant, including his will. I had to adjust as a result. The kid would inherit the remaining amount if Marcus passed away while I was still pregnant, but I would keep the insurance. Thus, the answer was straightforward. Have the baby, kill Marcus, and kill him as well. Keep everything. She was telling the truth about everything. Every word was captured and sent. I needed more, but the police were paying attention. Calvin was paid by you to undermine the brakes. $2,000. Considering that I received $200,000 from the insurance, it was a great deal. My life's greatest investment. Additionally, the infant your own son was a barrier, nothing more. In a cottage I paid cash for, I gave birth by myself. Nobody was aware of my pregnancy. I dressed loosely. I stayed away from others. I considered simply leaving him somewhere when he was born. Then I thought of the lake you and Marcus used to visit. It seemed fitting to conclude everything at the beginning of your small family custom. I was ill. I was furious. I sensed that the woman in front of me was the target of all the hate in the world. But you didn't succeed. He was saved by me. That was annoying, indeed. But since I'm going to finish the job immediately, it doesn't matter. Elijah is where. I won't give him to you, Ellie. There was no question. Then I noticed the weapon. It was little, black, and aimed straight at my chest as she took it out of her sweatshirt. Final opportunity. My son, where are you? The panic button was pressed 1, 2, and 3 times. I told him you would never touch him. She moved her finger to the trigger. Everything appeared to be moving slowly. The flash was visible to me. I heard the gunshot. Something struck my shoulder, burning hot. I tumbled backward. The boathouse suddenly began to move. Doors flew open. I saw Sloane turn as voices cried out, "Police, drop the weapon. Get on the ground now." And there were blinding lights. The weapons were aimed at her, as I could see. She was encircled, as I could see. I briefly believed she was going to fire again. She was going to make them kill her, I thought. However, she lowered the weapon gradually. She dropped it to the ground. She held up her hands. She was handcuffed, trapped, face down, and tackled by 3 officers. Despite her yelling, threats, and insults, nothing changed. She was taken into custody. It was finished. Ava came running to kneel beside me. "Stay with me, Ellie." Despite the excruciating discomfort in my shoulder, I managed to say, "I'm fine. You've got her. Tell me you've got her." "We managed to get her. Now it's over. Remain still. An ambulance is en route." I shut my eyes. It was sufficient. At last, it was over. It was different the second time I woke up in the hospital. This time, I felt relieved, rather than hopeless. Calm. The bullet missed the bone but scraped the muscle in my shoulder, causing pain. "Fortunate," the physician said. "Your heart would have been an inch to the left." Elijah was in Diane's arms as she sat beside me. She grinned when I opened my eyes. "Look who woke up," she murmured, drawing nearer. "Someone missed you a lot." I grabbed Elijah in my good arm and held him against my breast. He smelled of hope and powder, and he began to make little noises that newborns make when they are joyful. "Hello, my love," I said. "Grandma's fine." An hour later, Ava arrived with flowers and a weary smile, saying, Everything's good now. How are you feeling? Like someone who's been shot, I said, but alive. What happened to Sloan? Arrested, charged with first-degree murder for Marcus, attempted homicide for Elijah, attempted homicide for you, plus a laundry list of other crimes, conspiracy, fraud, obstruction of justice. She's going to spend the rest of her life in prison without the possibility of parole. The words were sweet as honey. Justice. Finally, the recording worked perfectly. She confessed everything. Her lawyer tried to plead coercion that you forced her to say those things, but the jury saw the whole video. They saw her pull the gun, shoot. They had no mercy. 30 minutes of deliberation. Guilty on all counts. In the following months, I recovered slowly. Physical therapy for my shoulder was painful, but necessary. Diane kept coming to help with Elijah when I couldn't lift him with my injured arm. Reverend Thomas brought food. Neighbors I barely knew showed up with casseroles and kind words. "You're a hero," said the lady from the house down the street. "What you did for that baby, risking your life like that." But I didn't feel like a hero. I just felt like a grandmother doing what any grandmother would do, protecting her own. 2 months after Sloane's capture, I had another hearing with the judge. This time, it was different. This time the judge was smiling as she reviewed the documents. "Miss Whitlock," she said, "I have reviewed all the reports from the last 6 months, the Child Protective Services visits, Elijah's medical evaluations, the progress reports, and I must say I am impressed. My heart beat fast. Elijah is thriving in your care. He is reaching all his developmental milestones. He is healthy, happy, loved, and you have proven yourself more than capable despite the challenges. Thank you, Your Honor. Therefore, I am granting full and permanent custody of Elijah to Elilana Whitlock, effective immediately. Furthermore, given that the biological mother is incarcerated for life and has forfeited all parental rights, I authorize adoption proceedings if you wish to pursue them. Adoption to make him legally mine, not just his grandmother with custody, but his legal mother." "Yes," I said without hesitation. "Yes, I want to adopt him." "Then, so it shall be, officially. Congratulations." The gavel fell and suddenly all the weight I had been carrying for months lifted. It was official. Elijah was mine. No one could ever take him away again. I walked out of the courthouse with Elijah in my arms. He was 8 months old now, chunky and happy. He smiled, showing 2 tiny teeth. He laughed when I bounced him. He pulled my hair with his chubby hands. Diane and Reverend Thomas were waiting for me outside. They hugged me. All 3 of us cried tears of joy right there on the courthouse steps. "You did it," Diane said. "Against all odds, you did it." That night, I made a special dinner. Well, as special as it could be with a baby who needed constant attention. I invited Diane and Reverend Thomas. We ate roast chicken and rice. We toasted with apple juice because none of us drank alcohol. "To Elijah," Reverend Thomas said, raising his glass. "To his bright future." "To Marcus," I said, "who's watching us from somewhere proud of his son." "To love," Diane added, "which always conquers evil." We drank. We ate, we laughed. Elijah banged on his high chair and squealed with delight, not understanding, but feeling the happiness around him. Months turned into years. Elijah grew. He started walking. At 11 months, his first word was, "Nana." I cried when he said it. At 2, he was running all over the house. At 3, he started preschool. Every milestone was a miracle. Every day, a gift. I talked to him about Marcus constantly. I showed him photos. I told him stories. "Your daddy was a good man," I told him. "Brave. He loved you even before he met you. He gave his life to protect you." "Daddy hero," Elijah would say in his little voice. "Yes, my love. Daddy was a hero. And you'll grow up to be as good, as brave, as loving as he was." I never told him about Sloan. He wouldn't be able to comprehend that till he was older. For the time being, all he needed to know was that he was wanted, loved, and that there were people who had stood up for him. We threw a celebration in the backyard for Elijah's 5th birthday. Every child in the neighborhood was invited. Presents, cake, and balloons were present. Elijah was so much more lively than the blue, motionless baby I had taken from the lake 5 years prior. He raced around with his companions, giggling. Diane watched the festivities from the terrace next to me. She said, "What are you thinking about?" "It was that day," I said, "how I could have been 5 minutes later. How I could have not looked out the window at that exact moment. How everything could have been different. But it wasn't. You found him. You saved him. It was your destiny." Or Marcus, as I said. Sometimes I think he guided my eyes to the lake that day, that he somehow knew I would be there, that he could trust me to protect his son. Perhaps, Diane said, or perhaps you're just an incredibly brave woman who refused to give up. That night, after everyone had left, after Elijah fell asleep, exhausted from all the excitement, I sat alone in the living room. I looked at the photos on the wall. Marcus as a baby, Marcus at his graduation, Marcus on his wedding day, and next to them, the new photos, Elijah, newborn in the hospital, Elijah taking his first steps, Elijah on his first day of school. 2 generations connected by love, separated by tragedy, united by survival. We did it, Marcus, I whispered to his photo. Your son is safe. He's happy. He's growing up strong and good, just like you wanted. And although I knew he couldn't answer, I felt something, a warmth, a peace, as if he were there, proud, grateful, at rest. Maybe you would have given up if you had been in my place. Maybe you would have thought you were too old, too tired, too broken, or maybe you would have done exactly the same thing, because that's what love does. It makes you stronger than you ever imagined possible. It makes you fight when everything seems lost. It makes you find hope in the deepest darkness. I don't know what the future holds. I know there will be challenges. I know there will be hard days. I know raising a child at my age won't be easy. But I also know that every day with Elijah is a gift. Every smile, every hug, every I love you. Nana, when I look at him sleeping peacefully in his room, the room that was once his father's, I see not just the child, but the promise I made to my son, the promise I made to myself, that terrible day by the lake, the promise to protect, to love, to never give up. Some say it was luck that I was looking out the window at that exact moment. Others say it was fate. Maybe it was a little of both. Maybe it was Marcus guiding me from somewhere beyond our understanding. What I know for sure is that when I saw that suitcase sinking in the lake, when I heard that faint sound coming from inside, when I felt Elijah's tiny heart fighting to keep beating against my chest, I knew nothing would ever be the same. And you know what? I'm grateful for it. I'm grateful for the child sleeping under my roof. I'm grateful for the chance to see Marcus's eyes again, to hear his laughter echoing through the walls of this old house. I'm grateful for the opportunity to love again, to have a purpose, to feel that despite everything I lost, I also gained something precious. Tragedy finds us all. Sooner or later, it knocks on our door when we least expect it. It snatches away the people we love, the dreams we cherished, the security we took for granted. But what do we do next? That is the question that defines who we are. I could have surrendered to grief when Marcus died. I could have shrunk in fear when I saw Sloane throw the suitcase into the lake. I could have said I was too old, too weak, too broken to be a mother again. Instead, I chose to fight. I chose to love. I chose to believe that even in the ashes of the deepest loss, something new can grow. And it did. His name is Elijah. Today he is 5 years old. Tomorrow he will be 6. And someday he will be 20, 30, 40. A complete man with his own dreams, his own loves, maybe his own children. I don't know if I'll be here to see it all. I probably won't be. But I know I planted the seeds. I know I gave him strong roots and wings to fly. I know I told him about his father, about the love Marcus had for him even before he was born, about the courage it took to defend him. And that will have to be enough. Some nights like this one, after the house falls silent and only the ticking of the old clock on the wall remains, I think about the woman I was before that day by the lake, the woman broken by grief, living among the ghosts of the past, letting the days pass without purpose or hope. I barely recognize her now because the woman I am today, the woman who chases a 5-year-old around the yard, who sticks stick figure drawings on the refrigerator, who kisses scraped knees and scares away monsters from under the bed. That woman is stronger than I ever imagined being, and it all started with a choice. The choice to run toward the lake instead of running away from it. The choice to open that wet suitcase, even when my heart screamed with fear about what I might find. The choice to fight for the future when the past felt too heavy to carry. It wasn't an easy choice. It wasn't an easy journey. There were days when my back ached so much from carrying a baby that I could barely stand. There were nights when the relentless crying left me on the verge of tears. There were moments when I wondered if I had made a mistake, if I was being selfish to think I could be a mother again at my age. But then Elijah would smile at me. He would say, "Nana," in that sweet voice. He would fall asleep in my arms, trusting me to keep him safe. And I knew deep in my soul that I hadn't made a mistake. I had done exactly what I was supposed to do. Ava and Diane are still part of our lives. Ava stops by occasionally bringing gifts for Elijah, checking on how we're doing. Diane has become almost an aunt to him. She takes him to the park on Sundays, teaches him about birds and trees, gives him that extra love every child deserves. Reverend Thomas blesses our house every Christmas. He tells me Elijah is living proof that God works in mysterious ways, transforming tragedy into triumph, pain into purpose. And Sloane, she is serving her life sentence without the possibility of parole. She will never again be able to harm Elijah or anyone else. Sometimes I wonder if she thinks about him, if she regrets it, if any spark of maternal love ever existed in that cold heart. But then I remember the look on her face when she threw the suitcase into the lake, and I know the answer. Some people are incapable of love. Sloane was one of them. She only cared about money, freedom, her own desires. She saw Elijah as an obstacle, not the miracle he is. Her loss is my gain, because every morning I wake up to the sound of little feet running down the hall. My bedroom door opens and Elijah jumps into my bed, his dark hair messy, his eyes, Marcus's eyes, shining with the promise of a new day. "Good morning, Nana," he shouts, throwing his little arms around me. And in that moment, all the pain, all the struggle, all the sacrifice is worth it. In that moment, I know I would do it all over again. I would face Sloane. I would take the shot. I would fight the entire system just to have this child in my life. When people hear our story, they often say, I'm incredible, brave, extraordinary. But I don't feel that way. I just feel like a grandmother who did what any grandmother would do, protect her grandson at any cost. The true hero of this story is Marcus, who saw through Sloane's charm, who changed his will to protect his unborn son, who was willing to face a custody battle to keep him safe. Marcus, who paid the ultimate price for his love. And the true miracle is Elijah, who survived against all odds, who fought for every breath in those critical first hours, who brought the light back to this house that was once dark with grief. As for me, I'm just the bridge between father and son, the guardian of their memories, the protector of their future. And it is enough. It is more than enough. Did you like the story? And which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story. With love and respect.